Kate, what are your thoughts on the policy direction delegates were voting for there?
Yeah, well, just 2 points of clarification. The stand your ground or castle laws actually doesn't speak about firearms whatsoever. That has to do with self-defense if somebody is breaking into your home. I recall a case that happened in my hometown of Lindsay, Ontario, where somebody who was broken into used some self-defense and force and ended up being arrested in the process, but despite being the victim of a B&E. So this is a response to instances like that. The immigration reforms had to do with people that are here who commit crimes and what happens to those people. So, it's not a broadly anti-immigration sentiment. I think what the Conservatives
there was a
said,
call for restricting immigration and tightening immigration controls, but not in an anti-immigration way, more like screening and these sorts of things, right?
And I think Poilievre, made that very clear in his stance. He said, these things need to be linked to ability to access homes, ability to access healthcare, and making sure that we're not overextending. So I would observe that these are policies that are likely to be very popular, not just with Conservatives, but with Canadians broadly. We've seen that particularly on immigration, where you have at least 2/3 of Canadians saying things have gotten out of control. So I think it's sensible that they would be adopted into the policy platform document or the policy proposal document, particularly when I think there is an opportunity for Poilievre to draw some contrast on these domestic issues vice the Prime Minister.
Brad, only 77% to defund the CBC. I feel like we're growing on them, but that's just me.
Today is Tuesday, February 3rd. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. This is Canuck News. I want to talk about this little situation going on in Quebec. Funny thing, guys, honestly. So, great thing about this article, it really just, I want to run it to expose hypocrisy. And so, what it says in this article, guys, get a load of this. So, Quebec is actually operating 62 foreign offices around the world. That's more than all other provinces combined. They have more diplomatic infrastructure than most UN member states, guys. That's crazy. Quebec does this while receiving $13.6 billion in equalization payments this year. Since 1957, Quebec has received $221 billion in equalization, over half of all payments ever made. Meanwhile, we have Alberta, which contributes massively to federal revenues and can't get a pipeline to Tidewater. Guys, let's go through this article because I think the hypocrisy in it is just devastating, to be honest. Christopher Skeet makes other provincial politicians envious. When the member of Quebec's legislature travels abroad, he's treated like a proper diplomat. In Paris, the French foreign minister meets him as an equal. When he's in London, they fly the fleur-de-lis next to the Union Jack. In Brussels, he's invited to address the European Parliament. The red carpets are rolled out because Mr. Skeet is Quebec's Minister of International Relations, in charge of what is effectively a parallel foreign policy within Canada's borders. Since the 1960s, Quebec has sought recognition as an independent player on the global stage to assert its distinct identity and to protect its interests. It now counts 62 offices abroad. When you include paragovernmental bodies such as Investissement Québec, according to one calculation by the public policy scholar Stéphane Paquin, that's about the same number as every other province combined. The province now boasts its own presence on UNESCO through the Canadian delegation in offices as far afield as Tel Aviv and Tokyo, often featuring official residences fit for a sovereign state. When Reid Scowen was Quebec's delegate general in London in the late 1980s, he lived in a magnificent 3-story house with a maid, cook, and driver, recalled his own son Peter, a former Globe editorial writer. The delegate general in New York, meanwhile, inhabits a luxurious condo in the Museum of Modern Art building, whose coming renovation will cost more than $2 million, the government announced last year. Quebec's foreign operation is not like the trade offices maintained by other provinces, Mr. Skeet said. It's more organized, it's better financed, and it's more systematic. It's rooted in culture. It is also rooted in the United States. Quebec's traditional bond with France has weakened since the 1995 referendum, said Jean-François Payet, professor of international management at the University of Quebec at Montreal. The commercial significance of the U.S. has only grown in the age of North American free trade in Quebec, now operates 9 offices spread out across the country from Los Angeles to Chicago to Houston to Miami. So guys, I'm going to stop here because I want to break down a little bit of what we just read, because we have 62 foreign offices worldwide. There's 9 offices in the US, offices in Tel Aviv, Tokyo, Paris, Brussels, London, luxury diplomatic residences, including a $2 million New York City condo renovation in the Museum of Modern Art building. Wow. Okay, 3-story London mansion with a maid and a cook and a driver. They have a UNESCO presence and a parallel foreign ministry that meets with actual foreign ministers as equals, guys. This infrastructure is, guys, this is ridiculous. You know how expensive that is? You have staff salaries in there. You have office leases in major global cities. You have luxury residences, diplomatic operations, travel. You need Donald Trump to tell you what kind of real estate these guys are sitting on globally. This is insane. Guys, and what's the real question here? Where does Quebec get this money? Because we all know Quebec is broke. We all know they're broke. They don't have money to pay enough general practitioners. Their healthcare is a catastrophe. But they have money to have all of these global offices, right? But Quebec is receiving $13.6 billion, guys, in equalization payments in the 2025 to 2026 fiscal year. So last year. And that, guy, that's over half of all equalization payments. That's 52.7% of the $25.3 billion. That's crazy. That's an insane amount. And since 1957, Quebec has received $221 billion in equalization payments. That's 51% of every equalization dollar ever paid out went to Quebec. Every single year since equalization started in 1957, Quebec has received payments. Not 1 year missed. Now, equalization is supposed to fund healthcare, education, and basic public services. But money is fungible. If federal equalization covers your healthcare and education shortfalls, that's supposed to free up provincial budget for other things, like 62 foreign offices, a $2 million condo renovations for your delegate general in New York City. Really? Maintaining a 3-story mansion with staff in London? Without equalization, Quebec would really have to choose between, do we fund healthcare or do we fund our diplomats in Tokyo or in Tel Aviv? Do we fund education or do we maintain relationships with the MAGA movement? Do we provide social services or do we lobby Texas legislature? With equalization, Quebec doesn't have to choose. The federal money covers the essentials. The provincial money funds the diplomatic empire. And where does that federal money come from, guys? Provinces with strong fiscal capacity like Alberta. Over 11 years, 2007 to 2018, Alberta has sent more than $240 billion more to Ottawa than it received back in federal spending. Guys, that last equalization payment Alberta received was in 1964 to 1965. Since then, they haven't received anything. So here's the actual flow, guys. Alberta is generating all of these resource revenues. They're paying federal taxes. The federal government's just redistributing this via these equalizations. Quebec is receiving $13.6 billion every year. And Quebec is just maintaining 62 foreign offices. Meanwhile, the Northern Gateway pipeline to BC got canceled. We have the Energy East pipeline to Atlantic Canada got killed. And we have the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which took 7 years. It required federal government takeover to complete. So Alberta's resource revenue funds Quebec's diplomatic ambitions, while Alberta is denied the infrastructure to sustainably generate that revenue. Guys, this is the first level of hypocrisy that we have. So it goes, Quebec's relations with the rest of the world have been governed since 1965 by something called the Jean Lajoie Doctrine. Named after the provincial minister of education who formulated it, it's often summed up by the phrase, the external application of our internal jurisdiction. Quebec governments of all political stripes have used that concept ever since to conduct diplomacy related to education, culture, natural resources, and other provincial responsibilities. The presence on the ground prepared the Ministry of International Relations for the resurgence of Mr. Trump and some of the upheaval it would entail, says Mr. Skeet, a member of the center-right coalition, Avenir Quebec. We saw it coming, he said. We boosted our staff in the Washington, D.C. office before the election of Trump. We maintained relationships with people in the MAGA movement. We knew Trump was going to win before he did. The ministry's close relationships in the U.S. allow for lobbying campaigns in American states such as Georgia and Texas, whose legislatures have been persuaded to pass resolutions proclaiming their friendship with Quebec despite Mr. Trump's trade war. All right, I need to stop here, guys, because we need to see exactly what we just read, guys. So they have this Jurien-Lajoie doctrine, the external application of our internal jurisdiction, which means, this is roughly translating, but Quebec can conduct foreign policy on matters within provincial jurisdiction, education, culture, and natural resources. This means Quebec essentially gets to operate these 62 foreign offices, conducting independent diplomacy, meet with foreign ministers as equals, address the European Parliament, maintain relationships with the MAGA movement, lobby U.S. state legislatures, and conduct natural resource diplomacy independently. And this is treated as normal, guys. It's crazy. The federal government is accepting it as well. It's even facilitating it because it's giving Quebec a UNESCO seat through the Canadian delegation. So now when we talk about Alberta, Alberta wants autonomy over natural resources. That's also provincial jurisdiction under the Constitution. Section 92A, provinces have exclusive jurisdiction over non-renewable natural resources, guys. So what Alberta wants is pipelines to Tidewater to diversify energy exports, control over emissions policy for its energy sector, and the ability to develop resources without federal override. What does Ottawa do? No, guys. That's national jurisdiction. It's environmental review, national unity concerns. You can't do that. Let's dig into this a little, because the Northern Gateway Pipeline would have given Alberta access to Asian markets and reduced U.S. dependence a while ago. The federal government, because of environmental concerns, canceled it. Then we have the Energy East Pipeline. Would have connected Western Canadian oil to Eastern Canadian refineries and reduced reliance on imported oil, created actual true national energy, like an actual energy corridor east to west. What did the federal government do? No, guys, it's too controversial. We can't do it. So let's just abandon it. Screw it. The Trans Mountain expansion would have tripled capacity to the Pacific coast, guys. No. It's going to take 7 years of regulatory hell, bureaucracy, and red tape. Then the federal government ended up having to buy the pipeline just to complete it, which is just crazy. It's insane. So here's the double standard, guys. Quebec, we can conduct independent diplomacy on natural resources under this Jurien-Lajoie doctrine. The federal government, don't worry about it, guys. Here's a UNESCO seat. Don't worry about it. Alberta says, we want to build a pipeline to develop our natural resource. It's in our constitutional jurisdiction. No, guys. No. We're going to block this and we're going to review it to death or force you to take 7 years to complete something. And here's the really insane part, guys. When Alberta separatists meet with the U.S. State Department officials to discuss Alberta's frustrations, David Eby calls it treason. But when Quebec maintains relationships with people in the MAGA movement and lobbies U.S. state legislatures, that's called diplomacy. This is selective federalism, guys. And Quebec is granted this autonomy to conduct parallel foreign policy, including on natural resources, but Alberta is denied all autonomy to develop its actual natural resources, guys. The federal government is actually picking and choosing, guys. Quebec is getting autonomy to preserve national unity, because Quebec won't separate if we just give them special status and just dump all this money to them. But Albertan autonomy is threatening national unity because Western alienation is dangerous, right? So Quebec gets 62 foreign offices and Alberta gets blocked pipelines. This is the second layer of hypocrisy I see in this. I really want to talk about why this could be happening, because it's not just hypocrisy. The equalization formula itself is rigged against Alberta. The formula is supposed to measure each province's fiscal capacity, its ability to actually raise this revenue. If your fiscal capacity is below the national average, you get equalization to bring you up. But here's how the formula treats different provinces differently. Quebec's hydro revenues. Quebec has massive hydroelectricity resources through Hydro-Quebec, but Quebec charges below market rates for electricity to Quebec residents. The equalization formula only counts Quebec's actual resource revenue, not what Quebec could raise if it charged market rates. And here's the perverse incentive. If Hydro-Quebec raised prices to market rates and earned an extra $100 million in revenue, Quebec's equalization payment would drop by $70 million. So Quebec is incentivized to keep electricity prices artificially low. And so the formula doesn't penalize Quebec for foregone revenue. Let me repeat that. The formula doesn't penalize Quebec for foregone revenue. Here is what happens with Quebec. So Quebec has no provincial sales tax. That's a policy choice. Albertans don't want PST, guys. But the equalization formula includes a hypothetical Alberta PST when calculating Alberta's fiscal capacity. So the formula assumes Alberta could raise a PST, so it counts that as a fiscal capacity Alberta has, even though Alberta doesn't actually raise that revenue. So the formula is penalizing Alberta for foregone revenue, but not Quebec. Here's the next thing. Quebec it bans fracking, right? It's a policy choice. Quebec doesn't want natural gas development. Fine. Does the equalization formula apply hypothetical fracking revenue to Quebec's fiscal capacity? No, it doesn't. The formula doesn't penalize Quebec for banning resource development. So let's review this double standard now, guys. Quebec keeps electricity prices low, foregone hydro revenue. The formula doesn't penalize that. Quebec bans fracking, foregone natural gas revenue. The formula doesn't penalize that. Alberta doesn't have PST, foregone sales tax revenue. The formula does penalize Alberta. This is a rigged game, guys. Formula is designed to maximize Quebec's equalization while minimizing Alberta's fiscal capacity. It's actually ridiculous. I can't believe that this type of stuff is happening. And this is exactly why Albertans are rightfully pissed off, because it's a highway robbery. It's a highway robbery. And what's the result? Quebec's receiving $13.6 billion this year to fund a parallel foreign ministry with 62 offices, guys. And Alberta receives zero and can't get pipelines approved. But honestly, everything just keeps getting worse, because Quebec uses equalization money to maintain infrastructure and social programs, and then Quebec uses its own provincial revenue to block Alberta's economic development. How? Because Quebec has actively opposed Western Canadian pipelines. The Energy East was going to go through Quebec and would have brought all of that oil from Western Canada to Eastern refineries. In Quebec, environmental groups fought it. Quebec politicians opposed it, and Quebec regulatory obstacles killed it. So Quebec is receiving money from Alberta through equalization, $13.6 billion this year. It uses that money to fund provincial operations, then uses its political power to block Alberta's pipelines, which prevents Alberta from diversifying and generating more money. That also funds Quebec's. This is literally economic insanity, guys. So Quebec is blocking the very economic infrastructure that generates the federal revenue Quebec receives through equalization. That's the third layer of hypocrisy, and it's systemic, guys. This is widespread across Canada, and I completely understand why Albertans are pissed off, and they should be. I wonder how accountable Quebec leadership would be if there were no equalization payments. Honestly, this is just an open-ended question. I'm actually quite curious. I'm curious to know how many of those foreign offices they would have if their constituents were forced to choose between foreign offices and healthcare. And I wonder how big of a independence movement would exist if they had to make those choices. I'm actually questioning this. But guys, why this matters to Canadians? Let me explain why you should really care about this, even if you don't live in Alberta or Quebec, because this isn't just about provincial bickering, guys. This is about a broken system that punishes productive provinces and rewards unproductive policies. Guys, first, you have tax dollars are subsidizing inefficiency. When Quebec is purposefully keeping electricity prices artificially low because raising them would cost equalization money, that's a perverse incentive. Quebec could raise billions more in revenue by charging market rates for Hydro-Quebec power, but the formula punishes them for doing so. So instead, federal taxpayers, including you, make up the difference through equalization payments. You are paying for Quebec to keep electricity prices low. The second is that the system is blocking national infrastructure. Energy East pipeline would have connected Western oil to Eastern refineries. This means Eastern Canada wouldn't need to import oil from Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, or the US. You know how ridiculous it is that you're importing oil from goddamn Saudi Arabia? Really? When we have the second largest oil reserves in the world? next to Venezuela. It's actually insane. Or even from the US. Why would we import oil from the US? The true energy security cost is coast to coast. The jobs in every province, the pipeline crosses. There's lower energy costs from domestic supply. But Quebec opposed it. No, guys, ESG. We need more. We need better environmental policies. Let's not get a pipeline going. Let's not have cheap gas. No, we don't need that. And Quebec had no economic incentive to actually support it because they get the equalization payments regardless. Why would they care? If provinces actually needed to cooperate economically to fund their operations, guys, Energy East would have been built. Quebec would have wanted their transit fees, the construction jobs and the economic spin-off from it. But with $13.6 billion in equalization, Quebec can afford to oppose projects that would benefit the entire country. And the third thing is, this is tearing the country apart, because in 2021, 62% of Albertans voted to remove equalization from the Constitution. 62%. 30% of Albertans are now open to separation according to these recent polls. Alberta separatists are meeting with US officials because they see no future in a confederation. Why? It's obvious. Because they're funding a system that actively works against their interests, guys. They send $240 billion more to Ottawa than they get back. The money funds Quebec's diplomatic empire and social programs, and then Quebec uses its political power to block Albertan pipelines. It's unsustainable, guys. It's completely unsustainable. And the fourth reason is it prevents real economic reform. Quebec should be developing its natural gas resources through fracking. It has massive shale gas deposits, but Quebec bans fracking and faces no penalty in the equalization formula. Instead, Quebec imports natural gas from the US and Alberta. How effing ridiculous is it for you to import natural gas from the US and from Alberta when you have it yourself? Like, Jesus Christ. If Quebec had to fund itself, it would develop its own resources. Real economic policy, real development, real jobs. Because when you're not on welfare, you're forced to do it. But equalization removes that pressure, guys. This is it. They're on welfare. They're on Canadian welfare. And Quebec can ban resource development, import energy, and let federal transfers cover that difference because they don't care. Why would they? You're paying for the provinces to make economically irrational choices. And the fifth thing is, this actually undermines Canadian sovereignty. Holly. Because Quebec is operating 62 foreign goddamn offices, maintaining relationships with the MAGA movement. Quebec's lobbying U.S. legislator, probably with Albertan money, and it's meeting with all of these foreign ministers independently. But when push comes to shove, when Trump threatens tariffs, Canada has no unified response. We have a federal government that's trying to negotiate, and a province with its own parallel foreign policy pursuing its own interests on another province's money. So this weakens Canada's negotiating position internationally. And the bottom line is, guys, this system is broken. It rewards for making bad economic decisions, and it removes incentives for interprovincial cooperation. It blocks national infrastructure that would benefit all Canadians. And it's driving Western alienation to the point where separation is a serious conversation. Like, we're actually having this conversation. Despite all of Carney's, eloquent speeches, it's actually making Canada weaker on the world stage. Whether you live in Ontario, BC, Saskatchewan, or the Maritimes, this affects you directly. Higher taxes to fund equalization. It blocked infrastructure that would create jobs in your province. Imported oil when we could be energy self-sufficient. A country fracturing along regional lines, guys. This isn't sustainable, and it needs to change. This is all I have for you guys today. Hope you guys liked today's episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. Stay informed. Stay curious, and God bless Canada.
This is Canada. Maple syrup and like cabin say, kick your ass all hockey season.